What's this? Oh. It's as if a million Egyptologists cried out in terror. No, they're still crying. Oh, that explains it. Hello my lovelies and welcome to the NPC Reviews. Back when I was a wee lowercase NPC, I had an ancient Egyptian phase, like many children. Or at least I'm told many children had an ancient Egyptian phase. Did they? Gnarly. I read the books, played with the Legos, and watched what media I could. Between that and my general fondness for cartoons, you'd think that the story of a boy and his 4 mummy guardians would have been one I grew up on. Well, except for 1, maybe 2 episodes, no. So let's give this missed opportunity a look and see how it shakes out without nostalgia backing it up and a tempered ancient Egyptian love. This is Mummies Alive. An ancient Egyptian prince is reincarnated in the modern world and is protected by 4 guardian mummies from the sorcerer who would take his soul for eternal life. More specifically, our story begins with an homage to the mummy, cursed tomb, arrogant archaeologist, and superstitious locals.
Do not go in, it is cursed!
Yusef, whatever's in there hasn't been able to hurt anyone for 3,500 years. I don't think it's going to start now.
Who turn out to be right. At least the archaeologist got his comeuppance. The counting marks is an interesting touch, though. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, a young fellow skateboards his way to the museum, and youthful flippancy ensues.
The tomb of Pharaoh's son, with his mummy missing. Is it alive? Alive!
After a brief encounter with his mom, the young Presley follows the call of the past.
Come back to me, my son.
Knock it off, Walter. I'm not falling for it.
While also getting spied upon. He then discovers some interesting sarcophagi and even has a memory of emotion as something in him awakens.
This is starting to get weird.
He is then preyed upon by the forces from the tomb. Presley attempts to run and hide, but to no avail, and here we find out a little of what's going on.
How long I have waited.
Let me go! Who are you?
Don't you recognize me, my prince? Don't you remember your old pal, Scarab? Your father entombed me 3,500 years ago.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Help!
And now the mummies come to life!
It's alive!
Sorry, wrong universal monster. Anyway, fighting ensues. Talk about feats of clay. Anyway, Scarab turns out to have his own armored power-up and attempts to make off with Presley. To no avail. Scarab flies off and Presley and the mummies make their escape using the cat as a grappling hook. You heard that correctly. They make their way to Presley's house where introductions are made.
Who are you guys?
I am Jakal, this is Armon and Raf, and he is Nefer.
You mean she?
No, you're just a boy. How would you know?
Actually, the prince is right. I am Nefertina. I only pretended to be a man, since women are not allowed to drive the chariots of the Pharaoh.
No wonder he never went swimming in the Nile with us.
Oh, hi, guys. I didn't know you were here. I was just washing, so now I'm clean, and I'm gonna go. Bye-bye.
Only Prince Rapses knew.
This helps to solidify Presley as the prince. Back at the museum, the whole exhibit essentially gets purloined by a rich man who's totally not Scarab, while Presley gets the premise of the show.
So let me get this straight. You're supposed to guard the Pharaoh's son, even though you're like mummies. So if I'm in trouble, I mean, when Rapses is in trouble, you call on Ra and whoever, and they give you the power to kick butt, right?
But why in the name of Ra would anyone want to kick Tut?
Be mindful of that one, they use it a lot. Mom comes home, ancient person meets modern technology shenanigans occur, and they find out the exposition with their sarcophagi, their means of renewal, are being sent back to Egypt. So they steal a car, almost kill a kid, and make chase while Scarab exposits to his snake. They manage to catch up to their sarcophagi and rest up. Scarab and his shop waylay the truck with the intention of destroying the sarcophagi when Presley also arrives. Scarab makes to capture him when the mummies transform and fighting ensues once again. There's some freeway shenanigans and they manage to throw Scarab off them, although he does declare,
I will destroy those mummies, even if I must shatter the world to do it.
After that, Presley is dropped off at home and the mummies go and make their lodgings at the museum. After that, most episodes revolve around Scarab coming up with some plan to capture Presley, aka Prince Rapses, in order to attain eternal life. The full explanation for this and Presley as the reincarnated prince isn't really gone into until episode 2, unfortunately. From there, the episodes tend to be episodic, although continuity does start to accumulate after a certain point. Presley Carnarvon, the reincarnated Prince Rapses, or as I call him, the MacGuffin Prince. He's your average kid, likes to play, hang out with friends, has a complicated relationship with school, and is put up with the supernatural shenanigans that intrude into his life, but ends up rolling with it. Besides being the object of Scarab's desire, he doesn't have more narrative purpose beyond that, however, and it does show at times. He does try to acclimate the mummies to the modern day life, with varying degrees of success. He does serve his role decently, and at the end he and the mummies do become family. Jakal is the leader of the mummies, hunter extraordinaire, and family man who lost his family. As such, between this and his role as protector, he becomes quite fond of young Presley, even becoming quite agitated when Presley's absentee father makes an appearance later in the series. His key descriptor is duty, both in how it grants purpose and tears at him.
Perhaps. But must my duties always come first, even before my own family? Well, yes.
Next we have Wrath, prideful sorcerer and royal smart person of the mummies, Presley's tutor in his past life and in the modern world. He, along with Jakal, share the task of training the young prince to be ready for Scarab's schemes. As said, he is prideful, not usually willing to admit that he doesn't know something, and at times gets into brain versus brawn debates with Armon. He does learn to quell his pride and adapt to the modern world, in his case actually proving how clever he is by adapting and incorporating modern technology into his magic. He built the vehicles that the mummies gallivant around San Francisco in, after all. While you might think pride would be Wrath's key descriptor, I would say that it is love. It is a ruined love that haunts him, and love that empowers him to put it to rest. Oh, yeah, obviously. Nefertina, fiery whip wielder and wheelman, wheel woman? Wheel person of the mummies. She is the most outgoing and adapted to the modern day of the four of them, going out dancing and wanting the mummies to make connections beyond the Sphinx. She is also stubborn, but this is a boon and bane. It helps to keep her going, but does cause some headbutting at times. Despite her desires and tangles with love, her key descriptor would be freedom, from wanting to be a charioteer in life to wanting to live life, unlife, in addition to her duties. She wants nothing more than the freedom to be who she is and to express herself. Armon. Armon is Armon. I must admit a certain amount of shame that I didn't get his name until 20 episodes in. He's hungry, and that's about it. We get a few glimpses of something else here and there, but it's always drowned out by his stomach growling and his desire for a beefy burger. I watched every episode, and I still have to wonder why he needs to eat at all, as they are explicitly said to not be alive. Maybe it's psychosomatic? If this were an RPG, maybe he would have the addiction drawback. Anyway, he's the strong one, and is the unarmed specialist. Key descriptor is hunger.
Hey guys, check this out. Imagine the sandwich I can make with this puppy.
And moving on. Now for the desert departed dastardly deplorables. Scarab is our primary villain of the series, the sorcerer, advisor, and vizier type to the pharaoh Amenhotep, although which Amenhotep is never stated. He wanted immortality and to rule Egypt. He's from the same school of vizierry as Jafar, basically. He was only partially successful and he got longevity instead. We never really find out much beyond immortality of what he wants. There is a short bit about taking over the world, but it was short-lived and wasn't really brought up again. I guess it could be implied? Scarab could be described in a number of ways. Crafty as he combines magic with technology, making some of his old rituals easier and more efficient, and to skyrocket himself into a position of wealth and influence in around 6 months from being released. Cruel. Everyone is a tool for his plans or fodder for his continued living. Egotist I think fits best. Yes, most every villain could be described as such, but Scarab takes it up a notch. He likes those best that reminds him of himself, and this is a guy who got a cold and summoned a goddess known for destroying cities to cure him so he wouldn't have to wait a week to get better.
I've always hated that phrase.
Another villain of note is Chantra. She's Wrath's former student and old flame, the love that haunts him. An enchantress, yes, that's where her name comes from, of no small ability, along with a host of other magics. She proves to be a thorn in the mummy's side on more than one occasion, even if she doesn't get as much screen time as Scarab. Her descriptor is spite. Her main goal in most cases is vengeance on Wrath for releasing her from his tutelage in order to follow Pharaoh's command to teach his son. Although, to be fair, she didn't need his instruction at that point. They still could have been together, just not as teacher and student. Maybe she was more upset at losing control of him? However which way one sees it, she gives the audience breaks from Scarab. After those two, there are some one-off and recurring side villains, most often gods or spirits summoned by Scarab. Some are generally evil in their intent, while others are more forces of nature that the heroes have to appease and endure. MVP is probably Heka though, Scarab's snake, staff, familiar, and assistant. She puts up with Scarab's ego trips and is the only one that can get jabbed in at him. She's sassy and I like it.
The diamond dust will make me look young and handsome.
What are you gonna do? Throw it in people's eyes?
On the technical side of things, the music for the most part is forgettable. It punctuates, adds emphasis as needed, and then goes home. The opening theme song is catchy though, and the beat sticks in your head. Then again, it was composed by Ron Wasserman, aka the Mighty Raw, aka the one who composed the Power Rangers theme music. So this is not surprising. Oh, yeah, everybody needs a paycheck. The voice acting of the main characters is good. Hi, Cree Summers, always good to hear you. They perform well, and while Scarab could be considered a bit too soft in his voice, I think it adds some menace to his character. The side characters generally perform well with only the occasional stiff bit of performance. The animation is one of the show's biggest weaknesses, and it could be its forgivable one if not for the other issues which we'll talk about later. It's inconsistent. It ranges from decent to stiff, and with the occasional moments of good, and it fluctuates, even in the same episode. The highest bit of animation are the transformation sequences, and the rest of the animation never reaches that level again. Overall, it averages out to be below average. A lot of questions come with Mummies Alive. Why is the Western Gate the portal to the spirit realm in San Francisco? Is Presley a reincarnated prince, or does he carry a separate spirit in him? The show treats it like both. How can Scarab so casually summon gods? There's too many head scratchers. This show has everything I should like. Reincarnation, undead heroes, strangers out of time, magic, transformation sequences, and ancient Egypt. But none of the pieces really come together, and this is due to the other two key weaknesses of the show. Firstly, they don't do ancient Egypt very well. I can best describe it as they took a quick look at the dictionary of mythology and called it good. A number of the spirits or gods that appear in this show might look like their mythological namesake, but never act like them, or have an aspect of their character, and then usually act like stock villains or characters of the animals associated with them. I figure they most get right are the shop teas, and it's not hard to mess up clay figures that provide manual labor in the next life. The biggest issue I take with the show is the lack of narrative through line. What is Presley for exactly? Yes, if Scarab gets him, he would probably die, and Scarab would get to live forever. We know the mummies are linked to him, and that he has a strong spirit, mystically and mentally, but there is nothing for him to do. He has no destiny, whether he struggles to fulfill it or against it. You don't even have to feature the destiny bit all the time, just something to have working in the background. It feels like they're always spinning their wheels. Let's compare this to Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon, reincarnated princess with guardians. Her path shows that she has to defeat the Dark Kingdom and other threats to save the world in the short term. In the long term, we eventually find out that she, her love, and her friends are meant to bring about a near-utopic kingdom in the future. Immediate need and future destiny create a narrative through line for the show, and that things are moving forward. Mummies Alive has a good setup, but none of this. Not to mention more than a few wasted opportunities for variety. That is not to say the show doesn't try. There are character moments, sometimes even foreshadowed, but they get lost in the shuffle of the hijinks until some of the episodes at the end of the series. And there are some good jokes in there as well.
This is no time for such fantasies. I am trying to teach you science. Now, do you want to learn how to change a staff into a snake, or don't you?
Also, Wrath inadvertently invented discomancy. You have to give the show points for that. I feel myself drawn to Mummies Alive less for the show itself, and more with what I could do with it. And two lines of thought come to mind. First is inspiration for gaming, in particular, Mummy the Cursed of the Chronicles of Darkness. Say the mummies are arisen who wake up at the behest of their judges because they are called to protect a boy who is charged with second life energy. This boy is meant to be the eventual instrument and vessel of the judge in the living world, so they must train him to use his magic and condition him to be the vessel. All the while, a cabal of deceived arisen are trying to get a hold of the boy to claim his power for their dark masters, and use him as a direct link to the judge aiming to usurp their position, and in the process causing catastrophic damage in the worlds of the living and the dead. In the midst of all this, the Arisen are remembering who they were and must balance purpose with identity, spurred in both by their relationship to the vessel. The other line of thought is a fix-it reboot kind of thing. First, give Scarab ambitions beyond longevity. Have him want to take over the world to rule as its eternal god king. The mummies arise to protect the young prince. Why did he reincarnate in San Francisco? Because his spirit was drawn to the Western Gate. Why is the Western Gate in San Francisco? Because it slowly moved over the course of 3.5 millennia. kind of like how some natural features move or change over time. Have Presley's strong spirit need training to control or risk causing harm, and make him more active in the fight against Scarab. Perhaps his magic more readily counters Scarab's. Later, have it discovered that Presley is foretold by the gods to bring about a renewal of the Old Kingdom, combining the good points of the past with the positive developments of the now to create an enlightened future, a narrative through line. And in the midst of all this, you have the mummies adapting for good or ill to the new world, learning from Presley as they in turn try to teach Presley the virtues of just rulership, growing close to him as he struggles with how he feels about his destiny. Throw in the trials of growing up in life and you've got a solid structure to work with. I'd also say throw in an older friend who secretly runs interference for Presley and the Mummies, and then later becomes a confidant for them. At first I wasn't going to finish Mummies Alive, what with the animation, lack of narrative momentum, and the uninspired use of the ancient Egyptian source material, but I wanted to be fair and give you, my lovelies, a full look, so I plunged forward, and eventually I had a...
Could be the lack of sleep talking, but I'm really starting to like this show.
Moment. At the end, I can't recommend the show as a whole. Now, it is fine for kids, as it is a kids' show, and it might inspire an interest in Egyptian history, mythology, and even San Francisco's history. For older viewers, there's not too much there. The substantive episodes don't happen until near the end of the run, and going through the earlier episodes might be too much of a chore. Now, as stated before, there is inspiration to be mined from Mummies Alive. If you go into it with the right mentality, you'll have a good time. Now, like all good mummies, I must return to my tomb, so until next time, fare thee well, my lovelies.